We're shifting the agenda just a little bit because of time constraints. Meg, so Meg's going to talk a little bit about the picnic. So if you come up and chat with us, and then we will introduce our speaker.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and all the Zoomers. Having our picnic August 19th, Vancouver Lake at the Heron Shelter, North and South. Got a barbecue pit. I'm thrilled to be on the committee, setting up and cleaning up. And if anybody would like to help out, that would be wonderful. We're going to be as environmentally friendly as we can be this year. Hopefully set some examples for people who didn't know we could be with a very fun picnic. Let's see. If anybody wants to help, get a hold of me. I'm in the membership directory. And I do know one thing that we'll be looking for is one of those big, not big, but water dispensers, kind of like you see that have plastic water bottles. We'll supply the water. I'm just looking for one of those. And I think this year it's going to be fun. If anybody has fun games for families, we're interested in those also. Thanks.
Thanks. We're still on. Okay, I believe it's now turning over to Teresa Torres. Good morning. You all hear me? Always a question. Okay. Today we are very excited to welcome Patricia Supplee. Please correct me, Pat, if I said that wrong. She has a doctorate in education. She's currently the director of Energizing Young Voters of the League of Women Voters of Monmouth County in New Jersey. On a different time zone. Previously a Fulbright specialist and English language specialist, she served as a consultant for the Department of State in conjunction with Georgetown University. She's a retired educator who has taught nationally and internationally at preschool, elementary, secondary, and university level. Dr. Supplee has held administrative positions including curriculum supervisor, principal, and chief school administrator. Her areas of specialization include curriculum evaluation and development, professional development, training for educators, and education of the gifted. She's also the author of a book called Reaching the Gifted Underachiever, which is on Amazon, but I'm not going to reach the URL. So, anyway, let's all give Pat a big hand and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I laughed when I hear that whole big long description. I think, wow, I sound like I've really been around the world a couple of times in terms of time as well as in space. The only thing that's missing from that is that I became an unintended civics educator once I joined the League, because I saw a big hole in what we were doing, and that was in really specifically addressing young people and encouraging them to become League members and engaged citizens. And from a single lesson, Energizing Young Voters has evolved into what it is today. I'm going to give you a really quick overview, and then there'll be some time for questions. And what I'd like you to remember while I'm talking is that this program has evolved over 5 years. My hope at the end is that you're going to be interested in beginning to use Energizing Young Voters programs, one or another, particularly the voting portion right now, because we face the 2024 elections and there's a big gap in what kids know and what they need to know in order to be effective voters during that election. But when you listen to this, it can feel pretty overwhelming. We started with one lesson, absolutely just one lesson in one 5th grade class. And it has grown to the point that it is because it's the right time and the right place for this kind of educational experience for kids. So if you decide to start, please remember just one, pick one and do it well and feel the wonderful energy that comes from working with young people. And then you can expand, gradually. That doesn't mean you all have to pick the same one. You can do more than one as a league, but don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed thinking you have to do everything all at the same time. So I'm going to share my screen and give you that very quick overview. And I'm going to try to stick within, oops, hang on.
Google's helping.
Google's, there we go, slideshow. I'm hoping you can see the slideshow right now. If you can't, let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue. So Energizing Young Voters, as I said, started with one lesson, and it was actually taught by one person. And that's where you can start too. The idea behind it was we started looking around and saying, well, what if we could get every single 18 to 29-year-old engaged and becoming a lifelong voter? How might that change the world? And we realized it was pretty substantially. So that turned into our mission. And it really has two parts that reflect the two goals of the league. One of those is empowering voters, and the other one is defending democracy. So the first three parts of the mission statement deal with the voting. So kids need to understand first why it's important to vote, because they don't think it necessarily is. Then they have to develop the intention to vote. And then they have to actually do it. So they have to be equipped to overcome any barrier that exists for them to casting a ballot. The part that reflects defending democracy is that kids need to understand how the political process here in the country works. I don't know about the state of Washington, but I know New Jersey has not had civics education in high schools for years and years. And so this is really foreign territory for most kids and parents. They also have to develop confidence and skill to be able to do that well. And they have to learn that they can do it, that it is possible, even before voting age, to really influence something that's going on in their school system or their community or even state and national. And then the last thing is they have to have courage, and they have to know that they can actually do this, and they can take time out when they have mental health issues, because many of them see the future pretty darkly right now. But they can take time out because there are still plenty of other kids and other adults who are working on the things that they care about so much. All right, so you're going to get the speed dating version of the lessons that are in Fighting for the Vote. You can access every single one of these from the website, and you can access the slideshows that we use in classes and the script. It's actually written out for you. So the first one of those is called the Timeline of Suffrage, and that was our first lesson. It's an avatar game. The kids assume the persona of someone usually quite different from them. And then we'd walk them through the story of the history of voting rights right back at the Revolutionary War, which we frame as the first war where we were fighting for representation. And then we walk them through history up to 1920, and then ask certain groups to sit back down. So if you're a Black man or a woman, you need to sit down. If you're Indigenous, you need to sit down. If you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, if you're disabled. And the kids begin to see how voting rights, even though they legally might have existed, really didn't. And then the rest of that is helping them come up to date with what the issue is. The second piece of that we developed very quickly afterwards, because we realized kids needed to really understand who turned out and who didn't turn out. So this is based on a series of slides that help kids recognize that the younger you are, the more likely, if you're a person of color, if you do not go on to higher education, you are not turning out. And the people that are making the decisions are white people who are relatively well off, who have a good education, and who are old, old like me. Anybody 65 or older pretty much votes consistently. So they're the people making the decisions. And when you look around Congress, you can kind of see that those are the people that are being represented. The third one, called Vote by Design, came from a friend who's a professor out at Stanford University who also calls herself an unintended civics educator. She's actually teaches future courses. She's a futurist. And she felt that people, kids and adults, don't know how to actually make decisions about who is the candidate that best reflects them. So this lesson helps people identify their personally held values around leadership and around the personal characteristics of someone who is actually going to be up for election in whatever the coming election is. So right now we're preparing it for our Board of Educations and our municipal elections, because that's what is next for us. They identify issues that are very likely to face candidates in those positions for the upcoming election. So the kids have determined that some of the things around here are lead's been discovered in the water supply for the school. Board of Education members are going to have to deal with it. Book banning. There are books in the library parents don't like. We have a new health and physical education curriculum that includes equity for and the need to make people comfortable in terms of gender. And so those are three controversies the kids have identified. And then they get into groups, they choose, they realize their perfect leader is not likely to exist within the group. They need to decide on a collaborative leader they can all live with. And then they have that leader try to come up with the first 5 minutes of a press conference that they would use to let the population know that they've got this under control. So it's a very, it's a high level thinking, critical thinking, and it really helps you choose a candidate based on your personal values rather than looking at who's running first. The fourth one, casting your ballot, has a couple of parts. There is a slideshow called How to Vote, the Rules of the Road, and it walks kids through all of the basic information about voting in person, which we still have, voting by mail, how do you register, all of the actual practicalities of that. And that can either be used in isolation or it can be used as a preparation for the voting simulation that we have. The voting simulation, a lot of schools bring in a voting machine so kids can see it and, you know, vote with a mock ballot. This is far more complex. It begins with finding a way to get every single student who's eligible to vote to register, and those who aren't yet to go through the process of filling out the registration form so it doesn't seem formidable to them. They get a sample ballot. They use the tablet, or they actually sign in an old poll book, depending on what we have available to us. They are challenged, some are challenged when they're voting, so they need to learn how to ask for a provisional ballot and how that's counted. And then finally, the results are reported. And we used to have kids, we used to have classes talk about how do you respond in America to the vote because the majority wins, but that's too sensitive right now. So we've eliminated that at the present time. It will go back, but not yet. The other thing in casting your ballot is that we have a student voting advocate toolkit, and one of the other leagues, the Seattle King County League, has already taken that and adapted it for the state of Washington. It's something that kids can, there's a QR code, they can download it to their phone, and it has the answers to most of the questions people would have, and they have it right in their phone. So they can refer to it, or they can refer other people or answer other people's questions. I'm going to show you, we just did a voting simulation in a city near us that is a typically underrepresented community. There are 700 seniors roughly in this high school. There's a group of young people who served as leaders in this project, and the school district provided them with the names of all of the students who would be eligible to register or to vote in the 2024 election. And they were each addressed individually by these kids. And the kids asked, are you registered? If you're not, let's get you registered right now. So there was a massive registration rate in that event. That's unusual. Normally we run a registration table outside the cafeteria, which a lot of schools do, but that was an exceptional event for those kids. The County Board of Elections brought in 5 voting machines and tablets. So every single one of those 700 kids in one afternoon was able to vote on a ballot that the school district developed based on local school issues, that the county programmed into the machines so that the kids could actually have the experience of voting on something that they cared about, and reducing the fears that we know kids have about voting for the first time because they don't want to be embarrassed or whatever else it might be. That's one girl raising her thumb. She's got her sticker on it. I voted today. And this is one other young woman who she came out of that voting booth with a beam from ear to ear. It was so good to see. And this is the entire team. So there are members of the league there. There are members of the Board of Election. There are school district employees, and there are kids. Very collaborative event, which is one of the things that we encourage. Everything, as I said, that you want to get in terms of the voting or the fighting for change lessons is available on the website. When you go to the website, this is the homepage. If you go to the What Do We Do and you go to the educators and community groups, that, if you scroll down, will have all of these lessons so you can explore them a little bit further yourself. The fighting for change lessons, again, quickly. The first one is, what's your issue? We know that kids, like many adults, cycle through issues very, very quickly. Every time there's something new in the news, they are concerned about it, rightfully so. But they learn in this that if they're going to have a real impact, they have to narrow it down. They have to choose one that they're willing to spend their time and energy on in order to make real change. And that there are other people doing it, so they don't have to be the leader. They can be a supporter, and they can still be effective. There's also a section in that on mental health and helping kids recognize that it's easy to look pretty darkly at the future when you keep hearing these things, but that there are ways you can have agency in making a change, and that you have to take care of your mental health if that comes up. The second module, it actually gives them skills. They learn how to inform themselves about issues they care about using reliable resources, and that includes learning how to use digital media in a way that is just as rigorous as we used to teach kids how to use print media. It teaches them the different ways that they can act at different levels of government. So they learn, for example, that letters are the most effective thing to use if you're trying to impact state and national, but there are other things as well. They learn that on the local level and on the Board of Education level, that appearing in person or writing a 5-minute or 3-minute, whatever is available in your community, public statement or question that you can ask during the public session. And then they're given the opportunity to actually begin to write that so that they can feel like they've got the comfort level again, knowing that they can actually do it. And then they learn they have to monitor things, that you can't just let something drop. Because it's passed into law, it doesn't mean it's going to be implemented the way you hoped it would be. So if there needs to be a change, you watch it and then you work towards the change that you want to see. The last section, we had a request for the first 2 of these across the divide. The concern about people being able to speak to one another civilly, which is crucial in our democracy, is so lacking in the world today. So we've broken it down into 2 very basic communication skills, but the kids recognize first in the active listening lesson that you can learn to listen to somebody and ask questions that will help you probe their thinking without trying to change their mind or without you needing to change your mind. So you don't need to believe the same thing, but you can understand better. And by understanding, there's more likelihood you can find some common ground. Learning how to speak to be heard is, there are multiple ways of sharing your point of view, and you have a responsibility to do that. But you can do it in a way that's going to make people put their fingers in their ears and not listen to you, or you can frame it as your opinion and that they don't need to, agree with you, but you feel the need to express what you believe. The last two of those digital citizenship lessons are being developed right now, and they were developed by students. So I figured that was logical because they know the field much better than we do, with a lot of input from more sophisticated research. That's the media in is being piloted now, and that's things like, all of the dark stuff that's on the web. And then media out is what do you share and how do you share it in order to be a digital citizen. The kids suggested that I use some anecdotes that came from presenting some of the lessons so you could see how kids react to those. And there are hundreds of them, but I picked out 2 pages and selected a couple. So in terms of the fighting for change, this one student said, I used to think I could not enact change, that small changes weren't big enough. Now I think I can enact change by starting small. I thought that was really perceptive. Another kid, I used to think I couldn't take a break, but now I think it's very important to care for my mental health. And then I do feel like I have the power to make change thanks to seeing who my direct representatives are and learning which means are the best to reach those figures and brainstorming on ideas within my own passion to feel my drive. In terms of voting, something that made a difference to me personally was the struggle of people in the past, especially women in the 20s, should not go in vain. And people in this generation should really understand that and go vote if they want to bring about change. I learned that I myself need to become more active and help educate my peers on voting and why it's important. This one broke my heart when I realized this student had gone for probably 3 or 4 years thinking he couldn't vote. I used to think if you were Mexican, you can't vote, but now I know if you're Mexican and a citizen, you can vote. He'd been a citizen the whole time, but just identified with his heritage and thought that eliminated his right. And this one, I'll begin to vote to change the fate of our future. And there are more of those on the website too, but I think it gives you a good sense of the impact these lessons have had on kids and the impact you can have by using these materials. And we are more than willing to do whatever it takes to support you. And you have another league in Washington who is also working with you. And I think there's someone there who's going to be presenting at your state convention. So that would be a good person to connect with. Anyway, that's it. Questions?
All right, so I'm going to be monitoring the chat, and Teresa and Mary, if you guys have questions. Is your mic on? Is the mic on?
I can't hear who the person speaking.
How about that?
That works. Yes.
Whatever that was. Okay, I hope you have questions, but it'll come up here so we can take time. I can do the microphone off, and I'm going to start with a question. Sharon and I got to talk to Pat the other day, and she was very encouraging. So we didn't have to jump in with all 4 feet, but to start out slowly. But I'm really intrigued by your advisory board. I think you call it your young people. Can you tell us a little bit? You did tell us a little bit, but tell the group how you.
I'd be happy to. We realized very quickly that we should have young people who were helping to direct this program, because the old people who were making all the voting decisions were not the ones who knew where the program should go in the future. So we put the word out to friends and league members across the area asking for young people, and we were looking for specific representation. So we were looking for multiple genders, not only male and female, but also who identified differently than that. We were looking for young people in high school, in college, and hoping also to get young people who were just starting their career, who would all fall into that 18 to 29-year-old. we actually now have people as young as 14 and 15 who are engaged in helping to make these decisions. We looked for representation from different races and ethnicities, and that reflected where we are. So we included Black, Hispanic, white, Haitian Creole, and Chinese. So we had, 5 different ethnicities initially, and we try to keep it at that too. We also talked about wanted representation from different types of educational experiences. So we have high school public education, private education, religious education, and a technical school student. We have similar things at the college level. So we have private college, public college, and an apprenticeship program, a technical program. So, and then they commit, they wrote up their own charter. They commit to a 2-year term of office with attendance requirements and extra activity requirements. So they're supposed to be engage in one other way. So we have like a legislative committee. We have an advocacy committee. Trying to think of what others right off the top of my head. Can't. So, and we meet in person 3 times a year, or in Zoom person 3 times a year, because they are spread up and down the East Coast. They go from as far north as Vermont to as far south as Tennessee. So we have a pretty good group of young people who can really give us some insight into what their needs and their issues are.
Thank you. There are no other questions? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi. I do a fair amount of historical research, and so I just want to clarify something that I heard, whether I heard it correctly or not. In your exercise, where in 1920 you indicate that women got the right to vote, and then I thought I heard you say that every single person who was BIPOC would sit down. Is that correct? Because if that was so, I would think that would indicate an inaccurate idea that 0 of those people in the United States could vote.
You're right that there were people who could. The Chinese Exclusion Act kept people of Asian descent from voting until after 1920. The same thing was true with indigenous populations. They didn't have citizenship until after that. The problem with the Hispanic population was that they could vote, but they had to, there was actually a literacy test. They needed to prove they could speak and read English before they were allowed to vote until, I can't remember the date. The problem with disabled people is that they had access issues. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that every single disabled person was not able to vote, but what we're trying to do at that point in time is to give people, kids and the adults who are in the room, the emotional impact of people within those groups who are not capable of voting. In other words, they may have the legal right at that point, but they couldn't later. And then the rest of the program, the rest of the lesson talks about each one of those individual groups and has more accurate information about when and how they actually gained the right to vote. So I get your point, but
yeah, I'm sure you do, because I think that this is something that's going on right now that as the League of Women Voters, because the importance of factual information is very important. I'm hearing a lot of people believing that none of these people were able to vote. And so I did a fair amount of research into that. And I think you would agree with me that really isn't true to say none.
You're correct. You're absolutely correct. And that is one of the points that is made when the rest of it, the point in time in 1920 is just to give people that emotional impact about how different groups were either had their votes suppressed or weren't yet able to vote, even though, for example, indigenous populations had been here way, way longer than anybody who was making decisions about their tribal lands. And they waited for that until they could have dual citizenship. But it was a struggle. And the kids have learned representative people who worked towards voting rights during each one of those eras. So I agree with you, but if we tried prior to that to make the point, we would extend the lesson, I think, for too long and lose the attention and the impact that the lesson has in the way it's currently constructed. But if there are things that you see in that program that you think are glaring, that need to be addressed and would still keep the lesson within a 50-minute class period, then I would really enjoy talking with you one-to-one.
Great. My name is Joe, and I have a question. I have a question. I was
Is it
so
on?
excited to.
I'm sorry, the mic is on. I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I was so excited about the program that you did in the high school, and you had so many partners in doing that.
Yeah.
Locally, we have such a great auditor and elections staff. They're also incredibly busy. Talk more, please, about how you engage the elections staff to so fully participate in that event.
That's a very good question. There is a law in New Jersey that requires the boards of election to provide educational opportunities for the 4 years following a change in the election machines. And we had a change to Dominion machines right after the election, where that caused so much controversy. So we are in a relatively easy period of time to do what we're doing right now, especially with Union County, where we held that last one. Those people in the elections office were amazing. There are other boards of election here in New Jersey, which set aside all the time, not just in these 4 years, but all the time, they set aside a certain number of machines that are pre-programmed specifically for schools to bring them in, or organizations to bring them in. Like we've gone into libraries too. That's why I said organizations, to bring them in to help people just experience what it's like. I can't think of a single district or a single county that has not been interested in it, because they really do want people engaged in the voting process. So I can't say that it has been difficult. The only thing I can tell you is that in most of the counties that I've dealt with, it has been completely free of charge. So they not only supply the machines and the programming and the actual printing of the ballots, because every kid got a sample ballot, and the transportation of the machines to the school and back, and monitors to monitor those machines. Union County did everything for free. In one of the other counties, we needed to pay for the transportation of the machines, but that was the only thing that we were charged. And that was about $200, if I remember correctly. And that was 2 machines that they brought in. No, 3 machines that they brought in.
Thank you so much.
I think this was really an excellent idea. Let the speaker see you,
Yes.
That was garbled. Can someone use the microphone if we were supposed to hear that?
Yes.
Okay, I think this is really an excellent program. Been missing in the schools for years. I'm old enough to have had civics education for 7 years of my public education life. I'm happy to know that this is coming back into the schools. However, I have 8 grandchildren between the ages of soon to be 19, and 30. And they have had zero, absolutely zero civics education in the school. And when I talk to them, and I've been watching 4 influencers in their age group that are working on voting for that age group. You mentioned at the very end that a technical school and a junior college that you're working with. Is there any effort to do education in the university system, college and university system, similar to this? Because those kids have missed what you're trying to do now.
Mhm.
My grandchildren and people that I know in the age group are interested in going off again. Okay, that's the question.
All right, the last part of that broke up again,
Okay.
but I,
Young people that I am acquainted with and talk to and here have 3 specific issues that you didn't mention a whole lot about. They're interested in guns,
Mhm.
climate, and all gender related issues, including reproductive health and reproductive services. And so those are different from some of the younger guys.
It's not different than the younger kids, believe it or not. We, in this particular county, we have some small urban areas, and near us are some very large urban areas, and guns are always something that comes up. Healthcare is always something that comes up. Equity issues, climate, the kids, no matter how young they are concerned about those same issues. And so when we're working on the Fighting for Change, we help them try to identify something they really can do and be successful at doing, whether that be in the school district, like just working to not have plastic straws anymore or whatever, to the town level where they were able to get an ordinance into a town that required vendors not to use plastic bags, only to use paper, or to require people to bring their bags. And then that has now become law in the state of New Jersey. So kids can have an influence on things. And if they learn to focus their sights on something they can actually see and do, or something they can see when it's done. So they have to really clarify what the level of their agency is, but they can do it. And it's really exciting to watch them walk through those steps and get a letter back from somebody saying, yes, I hear you and I'm doing this, it's this bill, and then you can get out and help to support it in some way or another. Does
Okay,
that answer your question?
anyways, so that's
I think
okay.
the first part of it was about community colleges and universities. How do we get the civics education back into there? There is a league in Boulder County, Colorado, that had a connection to the University of Colorado at Boulder that worked with people in the social sciences department to bring in some of the Energizing Young Voters lessons. I've had a lot of success in community colleges, and I love working with those kids. I'll tell you, they're just so engaged in trying to bring about change, particularly the Equal Opportunity Fund kids that I work with, which is a program in New Jersey that supports kids financially that wouldn't otherwise be able to go to college. So if you can find a single organization or a single professor within the college, you can get your foot in the door. And that's, once you get your foot in the door, you'll be on your way. You don't have to feel like you have to use the whole university system to begin with. Be nice if you could.
So we're at 10:39 and here in Pacific time. So I'm thinking we take 2 more questions, Edri and Lois. Lois first, and then Edri Geiger on Zoom, and then we'll go to the next part of our program with Sarah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
Thank
Lois?
you. Yes, hi, thank you. My voice is slightly hoarse, but Dr. Supplee, I wanted to understand how you got, given the school systems are so inundated with a gazillion things, how did you all get in the school systems engaged and signed up to execute the program?
A couple of different ways, but essentially it was finding one person within the school system. Sometimes that was a teacher, sometimes it was a supervisor, like a social studies supervisor. Sometimes it was a person in guidance, sometimes it was a principal, sometimes it was a superintendent, and one time it was a board member. It just needs to be one of those people. And when you can get in and make a presentation with that group, you have your in for the rest of the people, because I always ask them to bring somebody in to observe, while we're doing it, whether that's an administrator or somebody, and another teacher, a peer.
Excellent.
So that's the short answer, just one person.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Edri?
And you're muted, Edri.
I apologize. I am working the condo and I lost my interconnection. So I might have had this, but I, as a past educator, look at not only what occurs at the moment, but what is the follow-up to see whether or not what had transpired in the classroom or the group actually sticks. And so what is the follow-up, maybe in the first couple of years, but what is your plans for later to see really how active those people are and whether or not after they leave the auspices of your work, they still are or become so?
I love your question because I just finished applying for a grant to do something that has been on the back burner since pre-COVID, and then COVID hit and everything went to what. The grant that we've applied for is to do a statistical follow-up study. We want to make sure we use a very preliminary pre and post assessment, and we found that what we expected to find was that there would be primarily an increase in voter turnout, the intention to turn out in presidential elections. What we found was the initial turnout for presidential elections was pretty high, and it almost paralleled what it was, actually a little bit higher than what the typical turnout is in the US for presidential elections. That was the 2016 presidential election figures. What we found also, because we asked about state level elections, so gubernatorial and representatives at the state level, we asked about municipal elections, we asked about Board of Education elections, and those were representative also of typical turnout, which was very close to 5%. At the end of two lessons, the fighting for the vote, timeline of suffrage, and the truth about turnout, which is the data one, the kids' intention to vote in those other elections mirrored the presidential turnout, the intention to vote in presidential, which floored us because we had no clue, we had no anticipation of that. So we felt that we needed to find out if our instruments were good ones. So we needed, and we couldn't do it ourselves because there would be bias inherent in that. So we're asking for the Walter Brand Institute of Political Science to conduct a study, develop the instruments, checking them for bias, because we're hoping to work in one of the inner city, one of the very poorest cities in New Jersey, to determine if the intention to vote does change, and then follow those kids through to voting age and see if they actually do turn out to vote. So that would answer the question for the fighting for the vote with those first two lessons. The second piece of it, fighting for change, one of our Young Voters Advisory Board members is a student at Middlebury College and is currently taking a class in ethnographic research, with the intention of developing a study that she and I can apply for a grant to do, to determine if those kids who begin to be civically engaged in high school and college continue to be engaged beyond then. In other words, is it just a classroom lesson, or do they do something after?
That's my question. That's my question.
Right. So that's the fighting for change, the civic engagement piece, and that will come after the statistical piece about actual voter turnout.
Will that remain for a period of time? So for instance, a lot of times when you follow people, it goes over half decades, decades, and goes further. So is that, because that's really the importance too. Not only do they do it then, if they do it, but whether or not it becomes almost a habit.
In terms of the voting one, that is written into the proposal that we made. Whether or not we will be able to get enough funds to do that on a longitudinal basis, I don't know.
And can you go into the elections and find out? You have to pay, but whether or not somebody has voted, you don't know how they vote, but we can do that here. So
We don't even
we
have to
can-
pay in New Jersey. We can do
Right.
that.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
it's minimal, but we can do that. And so even if you cannot have a larger one, you could be targeting different ethnic groupings and things like that, and actually just follow through with that.
We
So-
could. And there's just one piece that I'd like to add to that. At the Tufts University has an organization called Circle that specifically keeps track of youth voter turnout. In the 2020 election, they analyzed voter turnout by state, the youth 18 to 24. And they found out that the average turnout was 50%, which was remarkable. And it ranged from 23% in certain states to 67%. And New Jersey was the top one in 67%. And we had been using these programs. So it was really tantalizing. There's no way we can know if there's cause and effect.
Yeah.
But I had my intern look at the New Jersey turnout figures for the same election. And he wasn't able to break it down by age group, at least not during the time that he was working for us. But he found that the increase, so not the turnout, but the increase in turnout by county, Monmouth County had an increase of 82%, which jumped way beyond any of the other counties in New Jersey. And that is where we worked. So with those two things, I felt we had some real grist for the mill to look further and to see if we really were having that impact.
Thank you.
So, we're out of time. Liz had one last question. I wonder if the answer's too long. It's, are younger voters aware of targeted voter suppression laws on student IDs and laws restricting third-party registration groups that often work on campus?
Yes, those students who are on campuses like that or in states like that are very aware of it. And some of our kids are working very hard to make a change in that area. Tennessee is one example. There were voter registration efforts on campus for students who lived on campus, but there was nothing for off-campus students. And so one of our students set up a whole program for the 2020 election where he got those kids registered and earn money in order to, pay for postage and things like that. So yeah, they are aware. At least some of them are aware, and we try to make them aware.
So thank you, Pat. Everybody, I think we can all agree this was wonderful and we achieved our goals of letting you guys know what the Civics Voters Services Committee's been working on. And Pat, if you would like to stay with us, you're welcome to, but we're going to go to Sarah now, who's going to tell us how she, with some help, has gotten her big toe at the high schools.
I'll listen.
Hopefully we get that mic to work. I think you have to hold it.
I was just sharing that I was bereft because you can't use paper boarding passes anymore. And so now I'm here with this. After looking and talking to Pat, and then investigating the website, I was absolutely overwhelmed. And when she said Tufts University, and I asked her about Rutgers University as well, and the involvement in words intern, I thought we've got a long way to go. She was very gracious when I was explaining where we're at right now. And where we're at right now is we have been able to table in a cafeteria at 3 different schools, 2 high schools and then ITech, the middle school and the high school. Was the, do we get a lot of registrations? Not necessarily. Do we get some interesting questions? Oh, yes, we did. But to be there and just with presence, I felt really great about. And Pat backed me up with that. So where are we next? Trying to get a hold of the right people in the district to get action is tricky. Everyone's been very kind. I was asked to please speak with the principals first. Several of the principals responded immediately. Some I still have not heard from. Most in turn sent me to the career counselors. And the career counselors have been fantastic at setting up things for us. Our next step, with the help of Mary, Schick, and Teresa.
Closer to your mouth.
Still, okay. Is to get to the schools and do a presentation within the school. And one of the challenges I felt is when you're in the school, we don't know what they already know. So where do we begin? And because we have 2 or 3 teachers we're going to be dealing with over a day-long period, we are going in at the basics, just the understanding of the concept. So using Mary's research and investigation on presentation, we have decided to go with things such as why voting matters, why do we have elections, the power in voting, low voter turnout, which I'm using a quote Mary presented with me that I really thought this kind of sums up where we're at. We do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who vote, Thomas Jefferson. And I thought if we keep that in mind right now, that gives us a little more courage to at least give the information out. Mary's going to be talking about voter eligibility, voter registration, how voting by mail helps, ballots, resources available, how the student can participate. We hope to have the presentation about, 20 minutes to 40 minutes total. It's with a question and answer session for the kids and to register the students as well. We're kind of going into it blind because we do not know the teachers themselves. So what they have offered will be at the end of May in Columbia River High School. And a number. Yeah. And there'll be 6 class periods. Mary mentioned, would there be involved in the severe following to take care of her throat? The other high school, I just got information from Hudson's Bay, will be going to their senior classes for a full day for 6 different lessons. Different classes, and pretty much giving a similar presentation for each of them. We have no idea about specific length, so it's pretty much as Pat said. Where can you help right now? What we're trying to do is, of course, we want more presenters. Teresa and I are going to come along to see what is involved. Okay, I'll talk quicker. We hoping to have the registration forms. Mary will be bringing.
There's not a backup mic.
If you want to help, what we're going to do is do these 2 high schools, see what's involved, and go from there. Adjust using the fabulous materials that we have available to us, and see how many people can use it, the threat of doing a presentation, how involved it will be. And I am bound before Mary because she can work this out. The information. It's on. Questions? Quick questions from anybody? Oh, yeah. I want to comment. There's a big hand.
Can you hear?
Vancouver, we have Evergreen that we're still trying to get into. All the Candace, yep.
Google, if you have a connection with a teacher, somebody you can blackmail, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we want to find out is what we have to offer, and we're thinking by doing this, by just doing these two right now, we can readjust the whole lesson plan. I love the higher level thinking of the involvement of the students. That's way more interesting than sometimes just presenting the basic knowledge. But Mary's also put together a PowerPoint slide. And if we don't have the technical ability of the school, Mary did say I could wear a sandwich board and she would be ripping off the pages on it. Question.
General question. In 2018, the Washington State Legislature passed a bill to restore civic education into the school. It had a specific start date, and I'm not remembering what that start date was. 2024? No. I think it's
2020.
Yeah.
It's happened.
So that is leverage that we try to use. Say, hey, we need to have it here.
Good question.
I think once we get going, I think it's.
The question was, there is the law now that the students are to have civic education, and has that been implemented? Our question was pretty much that too, kind of got a roundabout answer. And I also felt, rather than offering something, I felt like we were kind of pointing the finger, well, have you done it? And obviously you haven't, so here we're coming to do your job for you. I want to treat the teachers with the respect because I know how overwhelmed they are. So by us kind of coming in, I think quieter, then look what we can do for you. We can get there. And, but I think just once again, being the presence we wanted, just tabling and having kids look at the registration, and figuring out if they knew their addresses, that kind of stuff. We're right there right now. Any other questions? Okay. I will let you know as things progress what you can do. And poor Mary, we can't dump all the presentations on her. So think about that. Okay, thanks guys. So this calendar year after our meeting in January. You can't hear me at all. Okay, is that better? You hear me now? Okay. We decided to make an account to engage college students. We're at an even earlier level than the high schools, very, very preliminary. And college students, was it more focused?
Yeah, we're a little closer to that, not too close.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right. So college students are even more difficult to connect to than high school students because they go from class to class, they're often has part-time jobs, and these kids are all COVID kids. They're not accustomed to going to group events. So we decided to use a issue-based advocacy educational approach, hopefully to engage students in at least learning more about issues and that they should vote. And the first attempts are going to be at Clark College. Tracy Kelly has given us some openings there. So there's going to be two presentations in May at Clark College. And the first one will be on reproductive choice. The second one will be on healthcare reform. And the message will be vote. Know what the stance of your candidates is on these particular issues and vote. And we will have registration materials for people who aren't registered. We will offer membership in the league for those that are interested, and I'm hoping to gather a few students similar to what we have in New Jersey who can help us move forward. And I hope these are successful, although it's difficult to get students to come to things. The reproductive choice panel will consist of a young advocate from Good Choice, Washington, and Boki Govian, I'm upset, sorry, who will speak on legislative issues, and I'm going to speak on issues related to Nebraska, which has been in the news this last week intensely, and a very evolving story. The healthcare reform was actually by the student government at our college, and so there are many problems, as you know, from reading the news. We have rising infant, adolescent, and maternal mortality. We have a decreasing longevity in the United States. We rank very poorly when compared to other industrialized nations. And so Ellen and I will be making a presentation in that. So I am looking for other ways to connect with both Clark College and WSU Vancouver. This is going to be an evolving, brand new project. Basically, this is a pilot project. So if you have questions or if anybody has would like to help or has some suggestions, I'd be thrilled to talk.
Mary, what are your dates?
They're both Thursdays, and I think the first one is on May 4th, and the second one is right at the end of May. Just, yeah.
What time?
Noon with food. With food to get the students there. Yeah. Yeah. So.
We should have called Mary too.
Yay!
Entry. No, I don't have anything.
Do you want me to say something about observers?
Just a moment. How about another round of applause for Pat? This was amazing. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated and very proud of all of those that are working with voter services and civics in our league. Your dedication and the amount of time and effort that this is taking is amazing, and you are to be congratulated. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank all of you for what you are doing too. I'm amazed as I sat here, I kept typing and saying, this is amazing. I'm so proud of you. So good for you. Keep it up.
Thank you. And Edry, yes, I will add you to the program. When I sent the agenda out, it was very light. Since then, there have been a few things added, but they're brief. So please bear with me. Deanne asked me to let you know that there was a shout out to the league from Craig Brown in the Columbian this morning. I have not seen it yet, so I'm excited to read about that. Also, many of you may be aware that one of the reporters from the Columbian has spent the last number of months interviewing county officials, county and city officials, their little spotlight interviews, and they're not, super in-depth, but they are increasing the knowledge of what our elected officials are responsible for, and they do air on CBTV. They run about 30 minutes, so it's a nice thing if you see those on the schedule to take a look at them. State convention is coming up. There are five delegates. Let's see, Deanne and her husband, Dick and I are going. Irene Finley and her husband are going, and Sharon Brown. And so we're very excited about that. The convention is open to all members, and we do have room for 2 more delegates if you are interested at all. The annual meeting is next month on May 20th, so that's not the second weekend, it is the 3rd weekend. And Judy Stanton, anything we need to know about that other than come prepared to have a pretty good time? And we are going to have a speaker, Dr. John Ponca, on alternative fuels. Thank you, Mimi and John, for arranging that. And appreciate so much those of you that brought donations to CVM this morning. A lot of craft supplies out there in the front, so they will greatly appreciate it. And Mary in the back asked me about, do we get to see, what they do with them? Well, a month or so ago, they had a donor appreciation night here at CVM, and all of the artwork by the clients was displayed. Amazing artwork. And so they will have that once a year. I believe it's once a year. And so we can let you know when that happens. But it's incredible what they do with very simplistic supplies. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jackie Lane, if you would speak a little bit on what going on with the comprehensive plan update. Our league is looking at a speaker from the county. We won't have word till after April 17th, whether that will happen or not, but we will let you know.
Thank you, Nancy. So comp plan updating. The public participation plan was approved in March. On the 18th of this month, the population numbers, they're going to have a public hearing and will adopt. The Department of Commerce has given them low, medium, and high forecasts. Many of us are saying please take immediate because historically they've always been accurate. And if they pick high, that means they're going to expand their growth boundary, and that encourages sprawl, in my opinion. The Building Industry Association and any other development interests are pushing for high numbers. I believe the city of Vancouver is hoping they don't go with high numbers. They don't want their UVA expanded, is what I've been understanding. That's sad. Won't be the first time I've dropped it. Mining, there was a court decision for Chalachi that said you have to do a full SEPA before you can do a mining overlay. When they did that, they also decided they needed to do the same thing for a mining overlay they want to do near Woodland called Carday Hill. We're hoping that that means they will do a big look across the county for mining overlays and make that part of the comp planning process. And we'll see more to go happen on that. There is a calendar of upcoming county meetings and events around comp planning. I've been getting copies of that over to Judy. So that's posted where we can get it, right? So I'll be updating that today, getting another copy to you. But that is really their whole plan for all of the hearings and work sessions through till the middle of 2025 when we have to adopt the comp plan. So we have all got a chance to rubber us.
Yes, this is a biggie.
Some of you know I'm a charter nerd. I've been watching the charter work since the first time it was adopted. One of our counselors is pushing for the county council to put some amendments to the charter on the November ballot, which I believe would weaken the charter. Let them be more in the business of the county manager and stuff like that, and also weaken the next charter commission by limiting how much it can do. So that's something we'll want to keep an eye on. And I'll make sure, Judy, I can put the dates for some of that maybe as an addendum to that other document, because there are dates from the elections office as to when they have to have that all done.
Thank you, Jackie. I am particularly concerned about the talk that is coming up about weakening the charter and the dragging of the feet in regards to the ethics section of the charter. They're just not working on it at all. So it is something that we need to be aware of because it does affect all of us. So thank you again. Edri, if you'd like to share a few words about the election observers and yeah, speak as loud as you can.
I will. Yes, the election, we're going into special election right now for 2 school districts, Washougal and Woodland. But Woodland, you have to remember that part of the registered voters for that district are in 2 counties. They're in Clark and Cowlitz. However, as we have seen in special elections, the turnout is not that great. We had just I just sent out to my observers that as of yesterday, less than 17% had voted at this time. So when we're talking about getting out the vote, and you heard me say, what is the long term? It's very interesting for us to look at where we get a number of turnout. The turnouts are always bigger in the general election, especially when it's the every 4 years presidential, and then the primaries. But the special elections is chosen by a very few group of people because they don't vote. It's not because they can't vote, they just don't vote. And so that is a really important thing to look at. And as my observers know, league observers know, I keep updating them on some interesting things. So I will send out not only things about the local, but I also will send out some general ones to keep them updated on the election process as a whole, because I think it's important And I think it's important to also have league make certain that they always look through a nonpartisan lens. So it's very, very important, especially in this time where people tend to come up to me, and I'm sure they come up to a variety of you and say, you're all Democrats. I keep telling them, you really don't know what I am. And one of them we had issues with, who was the chair of one of the parties. And I said, we just don't know. I have no idea what my observers are. And nor does it make a difference. And then I shared with that person, I was nonpartisan. So I said, okay, of 160, you know that I'm nonpartisan. He goes, nonpartisan. And I said, yeah, that means I'm not a D or an R. And I vote just the way I feel strongly about. So our observers have been really great this last election. We're just seeing a few of ours. I think 8 of ours have been doing it. They hardly have all of the procedures have not been occurring just because they knew that there was going to be hardly any votes. So the big turnout of observers, maybe, and votes will be the week of elections. So Monday, election day, which is 25th, and the 26th, we'll probably see the most coming out. If you know anybody in those school districts or you live in them, maybe your best thing to do is encourage them, if they haven't voted, to get out and vote, no matter which way they're going to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Edry. Let's, Melanie, there you are. How many elections, how many races do we have coming up? I think I counted 47. I think Jackie counted more. It's over 60. It's a lot. It's a lot.
30 some cities, 30 some schools.
30 some cities, 30 some schools. And the thing about the local elections is they are way more important because they affect us with everything that we do here. And yeah, so these are the ones that we really need to pay attention to. Anything you want to talk about, Melanie? Because it's coming up soon.
Sure. Well, we've had a great turnout for volunteers for the elections forums, and I want to thank everyone who has volunteered. And I want to give you fair warning that I will be reaching out to you again soon, to those volunteers who volunteered last year with the primaries and the general. So we have, Sharon and I worked on that as co-chairs last year, and we organized our notes and our attendees and volunteers in a Google Drive, which we still have. So I will be referring to those and reaching out to you in the coming weeks. And then also I want to encourage anyone else who wants to volunteer, has interest in that area. We have a lot of volunteers, but we can always use more. And there are lots of different ways that you can be involved, from showing up, at the forum event, to helping make phone calls to the candidates. There are a lot of logistics to to invite everyone, decide on a date, decide on a venue. It's I'm good with logistics, so it's all managed very well. But the more people we have, the lighter load it is for everyone. And it is, for me, one of the most satisfying things to work on, because we know that what we do educates voters, gets the word out. I can't think of any more direct way to promote democracy than helping educate voters by hearing directly from these candidates before the vote. So I'm Melanie Hanshaw. I'm in the directory. So reach out if you want to participate, and I'll be making phone calls and getting those emails out again real soon. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Melanie. Also, the filing date is coming up in May, and there's also a deadline in May for questions to Vote 411 for our state. And this is a really good time to coordinate questions with Vote 411 and our local races. So for those of you, I imagine some of us live in the school districts and the localities that are going to have an election. So we probably know what some of the issues are. So I would encourage you to send either a specific question or a topic that needs to be addressed to Melanie, so that we can start early on the questions. And one of the main reasons is that Vote 411 requirements are much earlier this year as far as getting questions in, and we want to coordinate them with the questions that we ask the candidates so that we're not duplicating. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, this is a group effort. Thank you again, Pat. Are you still with us? Is she still? Yes, she is. Thank you again, Pat. We cannot, great appreciation, wonderful that you are sharing all of this with us. And it has given us an awful lot to think about and work towards. Want to thank everyone who's on Zoom that you were able to join us. And again, I thank all of you here in person. And I will see you at the annual meeting. But I just want you to know that I appreciate you very much. And you have given me so much over the last few years. And just 1 second, Sharon. And before we leave today, each table needs 4 chairs, and we will need help moving these big chairs back to where they belong. So that's the only thing that we'll need as far as cleanup here. Sharon, you had a comment? Please use the mic.
Many years ago, when my children were small, I went to a community meeting about the Vancouver School District levy that was coming up on the ballot, special election. Something that I heard there disturbed me greatly, and it has disturbed me for the last 25 years. The man who stood up in that meeting and said, if you are disinclined to pass this issue, do not vote. Because if you do not vote, then your non-vote carries twice the weight of any vote that is cast. And so, and if you look at it statistically, he would be accurate. So how can we, in relation to what Edry said, and we have special elections coming up for Evergreen and Vancouver School District, how can we as a league maybe address this issue of participation? Because it is important to vote, but it is important to make sure that the weighting of the vote actually represents the sentiments of.
Thank you. Excellent observation. I know that our voter services and civics groups are working on that exact subject. And we've been told many, many times, start young. But I do know that before COVID, we had a very, very active adult civics education group going on in the libraries. And you know, that's always possible to expand in the future. So yes, that is a very good point. Thank you, Sharon. Any other comments? Something online? Go ahead, Edry.
I just thought that you guys would like to know, since I also was on the Vancouver School Board, the school boards, when the school districts are not allowed to promote the vote, but they have supposedly public that do it, citizens that do it. But what they focus on are the precincts that most likely will vote for the levy or the bond issues. And they don't do a lot, their advertising is less for those districts, precincts that do not usually vote positively for whatever the school district is advocating for. This may be something for League to look at and say, are the districts looking at it through a different lens than we as League look through, and see that if not, we can get people out to vote and see that how whatever the district is asking for is really going to impact their children or their grandchildren or even their community as a whole. So I just want to let you know that's what districts do. And whether I don't agree with it, but they have limited amount of money to promote it. And so don't not all voters within that, registered voters within that district always get all the information.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, if there are no other comments or questions, then we are adjourned to put the chairs back.
Thank you, guys.
Here's your stickers, and here's somebody that wants some of the stickers. I said, you're probably.
Well, and I
managing
think,
it.
and I think, Judy was wanting some too. She's doing some kind of gift. Where she, oh, she's doing, I think she's doing something for the annual meeting, Judy Stamp. You want one of the packages?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good.
I was thinking about you. Yeah. So, you know, whenever you want to get a Kickstarter email out, and I have to go to the mineral. Yes, I will. Because, what could you do? Knowing how it works. And we can't let that stop. Oh, that's right. Oh, well, that's a table one.